Story 1. Finding out I did not have to. I remember the exact moment I was told that having kids was optional. I was probably about 6, and even then it was a huge relief. I am 30, and there's never been a moment in my life where I have wanted kids. Plenty of people have assured me I will change my mind, and I've always been open to the possibility of my mind changing, but it has never happened. I just do not want them. Never have. Story 2. The mental illnesses that run in my family, the state of the world, realizing I can't look after myself properly, let alone a child, the sound of a baby crying, animals are just better, the anxiety they would bring, the cost, the limitations, to name a few reasons. Story 3. The population bomb, my mother's mental illness, and my own reproductive health issues. Plus, I never liked or understood kids. They seemed like a huge, messy hassle. No regrets at 70 years old. Story 4. Because stupid people keep having them and smart people don't, we are going to be living in a world full of stupid people, putting smart people's kids at risk of sharing smart DNA with dumb DNA. I am not going to be responsible for that. Wear a condom. Story 5. Working in retail ruined it for me. Crying children who soil their pants for 4 years? Absolutely not. I also had issues with my mom, who demanded biological children. Out of spite, I never want kids. Story 6. My wife and I, when we were younger, were not in a place to have kids. We were not financially stable for it. By the time we got to that point, medical problems came up, and it was no longer feasible for us. A side story is that the first time my wife and I saw the opening of the movie Up was a week after getting that news. We were in a Walmart. It was on the TV wall. We stood there watching it, and when it got to the scene in the doctor's office, we both just started crying and holding each other. Story 7. Just don't like them very much. I'm actually great with them, or so I've been told. But I never enjoy those interactions, and having to do that for years without a break seems torturous. Story 8. I raised my younger brother after my parents passed away. I didn't want the job. It made me realize that we were so different, and all children are unpredictable. I'm not gambling with a new life, the rest of my life, and my spouse's. Also, have you seen the world lately? Story 9. Truly never wanted them. It would be a bigger decision to decide to have them. The first memory of stating it openly was when I was in college and my uncle with 4 wild children running laps around the house. My uncle joked, saying I will have my own someday, and I quite literally just said, no, I will not. It shocked him a bit, but it has been a rock-solid stance of mine ever since. Story 10. It is unethical. Life comes with suffering, burdens, and duties. The child would be the one facing the consequences, not me. It's not possible to have a child for the child's sake, as someone who doesn't exist has no desire to exist. While a lot of people who do exist have a desire not to. Adoption is the way. Story 11. Other than generally not liking them, there's a lot of generational curses in my family that I am absolutely not interested in passing down or dealing with in a child of mine. Story 12. Realized I didn't want the responsibility. Most days, I feel like I can barely keep my own stuff together. As a woman, mothers are held to a higher standard. A lot of my friends became mothers at 2021. They were all single mothers hustling and struggling. That lifestyle never appealed to me. I've never met a man who made me want to give up my womb and life for him. I enjoy being an aunt. Now that's my jam. Story 13. I am a parent to 2. How in the world did this question pop up on my feed? Well, since I am here, I think all the reasons mentioned are valid for not wanting kids. Honestly, there are far too many people who should not have children but end up bringing them into the world anyway, leaving those kids to bear the burden of their parents' unmet expectations, unresolved issues, or lack of readiness. Parenting is hard, and it is a lifelong responsibility. Choosing not to have kids is just as valid as choosing to have them, and I respect anyone who knows themselves well enough to make that choice. Story 14. Mostly because I think I'd be a bad father. I would yell a lot, probably get physical way too often, neglect them, and just be a bad parent figure. But I'm the favorite out of 5 uncles. Story 15. I was 2 years old when my sister was born. She was a nightmare, and I couldn't stand her. I was a very calm, quiet, and private child, but she was very hyperactive. I love her now, but I saw how much work a child was and decided, at that age, that I was never going to live with that again. Story 16. I would spend my whole life worrying about them, and I think it takes a certain type of person with good coping skills to be able to deal with the worry and still live a happy life. I cannot be that person. I also do not ever want to be pregnant. I feel like I am the type of person who would get postpartum depression, and I do not want to go through childbirth. All of that, combined with the cost, worry, and loss of private time that comes with having kids, as well as the option to simply opt out, is why I am opting out. Story 17. Did not want to shove a watermelon out of my favorite hole, first and foremost. Also did not want to pay for their existence, give up my own dreams in life, spend 100% of my time caring for them, or bring a human into this situation. Story 18. If I ever become stable enough and find a spouse, then I would consider adopting. Mental illness is prevalent in my family, and I have struggled immensely. I would hate to pass that on. Story 19. Never dreamed about that kind of family life. Always wanted to do things for myself. At my nephew's graduate school graduation, I remember hugging him and wishing I had a child like him at that moment. That was the one and only time, though. Story 20. Didn't want them because I was selfish, didn't like kids. Now, I have two. Laughing my ass off. I feel bad because this is a sick, sad world that I didn't want to raise kids in, but I'm making the best of it. They're little troublemakers, but they're my best friends. Whatever. Story 21. I'm gay. Finding a surrogate will be tricky or expensive, so if I ever decide I want a kid, I'm just gonna skip the diaper phase and bratty toddler phase and adopt a preteen or something. That way, they have their own identity and already somewhat understand struggle due to being an orphan or something. Story 22. Ever since I was in elementary school, I knew that the unequal distribution of responsibilities surrounding everything from pregnancy to child raising was unfair. Women should be celebrated for what we can do. We can build a human being cell by cell in our body using our own resources and still do other things like work, take care of ourselves, run a household, take care of other children, etc. We have the power to decide which genes get passed on, which ultimately determines our evolution. We are conditioned to believe that giving birth is just something women do, that it's our only purpose in life, and therefore it's not worthy of much praise or appreciation. That's disheartening. What do we honestly do to support mothers during and after pregnancy? I'm speaking for the United States. Even if it were our sole purpose in life, we should still be celebrated for it. Story 23. Chronic pain and fatigue, sometimes debilitating mental illness, finances, the fact we are on course to the next mass extinction event. I do not like messes and sounds I cannot control. I see my friends with kids constantly tired and stressed out, and it just never felt worth it to me. And honestly, really, the fact that I'm not 100% certain I want them, and that the experience would be worth the sacrifice is enough for me. Someone's life is not a thing to gamble on if you're not totally sure about it. Story 24. Considering I never wanted them, people tried to push me towards having them, and they weren't even willing to have a discussion on what if I ended up regretting it. So, as always in my life, I realized nobody in my life would look out for me but me, and I followed my gut. I'm in my mid-40s now with no kids and no regrets. Story 25. I legitimately did not want children. I wanted to be independent, career-focused, living my life how I wanted. I had a horrible home life growing up and felt kids ruined everything because that is definitely how my parents acted. Then I fell in love with a man who was destined to be a dad. And here I am, for kids later, realizing I was destined to be a mom. Kids do ruin all your furniture, but they are otherwise not so bad. Story 26. The standout reason was that I couldn't justify it without being selfish somehow. To be clear, I hold no negative feelings for people who have or want kids, and despite probably being a great candidate for fatherhood, or so everyone tells me, I just couldn't fathom a reason for biological kids of my own. I know my genetics are a little screwy, so that helped. But at the end of the day, there are so many negatives about today's society and the struggles people have to live through that I couldn't live with myself if I knowingly forced existence onto another person against their will, even if there was any good that could come of it, especially considering that there is a demand for parents without the increase in new children. See all of the adoption needs worldwide. Either I was serving my whims to live vicariously through someone young, wanting the experience of teaching someone what I know, feeling proud of my offspring's accomplishments, etc. All of them came back to somehow being self-centered. So I got a vasectomy at 25 or whatever, and that was that. If I want kids one day, I'll adopt a foster child. Hopefully, I'd be a good one by then. Story 27. It's very dangerous to carry a pregnancy and give birth. Extremely so. I never met a partner that would be a good enough father by my standards, especially considering I could very easily die during childbirth. And the money. I don't want to put myself into poverty and then raise kids in poverty. I'd rather maintain my quality of life without kids. But I love kids. And it's very sad that the worst people in the world have so many, and better people don't. But that's okay. Let the idiots inherit the earth. Story 28. Lifelong medical condition and medication would need to be stopped for me to be pregnant and cannot go over 9 months with nothing. I wouldn't be able to move. Story 29. Too many things to deal with come with having children. Instead, I'd rather do free tutoring and help less fortunate kids in my neighborhood or something. Story 30. I discerned a call to consecrate myself to God with the 3 vows of poverty, chastity, as in celibacy, and obedience. Children do not fit in with the vow of chastity. Story 31. At first, I simply knew I was too irresponsible, still a big kid myself, and would not make a good parent. I don't want to be a bad parent, so it was the mature decision. Then I realized how much it costs to have one or several and doubled down. Story 32. How I was raised. I do not want to take a chance at accidentally becoming my parents. There were many things I saw that a little kid does not need to see, especially sometimes on school nights at 3 in the morning. I did not know two people could hate each other as much as my parents hated each other. Thank God they got divorced. Something would always be happening. There was no peace at all until they got divorced. I was pretty much raised around physical fighting, so I just do not even want to get married either. Story 33. Finances and time. My job is the type that takes over your whole life, and frankly, I am not qualified to do anything else. I got sort of a late start in life, if that makes sense. Also, I was really physically unfit when I was of childbearing age. Finally, I married someone who never wanted kids. I love him with my whole heart and would not manipulate or pressure him into having them. To be honest, I regret not having kids. But it's too late now. Story 34. Immature parents whom I know personally, not mine per se, but I know a lot of immature parents who messed up their kids' lives on purpose for personal gain, and also because I'm an antinatalist. Story 35. I have mental issues that would prevent an emotional bond from forming, and I would do anything to abandon the child. Not to mention how messed up everything is. Story 36. My parents are severely disappointing people. The way they raised me is not how they are acting currently, and I would never want a kid to look at me the way I look at them. I also just do not want kids. My wife and I have no interest in having them. I wound up pregnant once and had an abortion. No regrets. Story 37. My choice was to have one at 17 or not have one, at least not biologically, and I'm not interested enough in raising a child to go to the effort of adoption. Story 38. I never thought of having kids in the first place. I don't want to give others what made me suffer, like autism or worse. Being required to participate in the job market full of incompetent higher-ups who cost more than necessary with sickening politics. Story 39. My body decided for me at first. I considered adoption, but then my parents got sick, and I became a caregiver to them and my disabled brother. So it's like having 3 kids to take care of. Story 40. I'm autistic, and anything can overwhelm me. I once ran out of a home bargain store because of how loud a baby's cry was. I do wish to be a foster parent, but anything to get me away from that noise. Story 41. I was raised on when you get married and when you have kids. So as someone else said, once I realized staying single and not being a parent was an option, I chose that. Story 42. I've been married for 10 years and have 15 nieces and nephews. I joke they are my birth control, haha. But no, there are so many kids in the foster care system that need stable homes. For me personally and my husband, It seems irresponsible to want to bring more life to this crazy world when there are so many kids here already needing people to love and support them. I understand wanting to create something with your partner and that not everyone is cut out for foster care or adoption. Being 30 and living in a southern state, the pressure to have biological kids is intense. As bad as this sounds, I almost wish I had an excuse so people would stop asking me when we're going to have them. If having a kid happens, great. If not, I feel I would totally be okay with that too. Story 43. My husband and I both have blood clotting disorders. We were warned that I would struggle to get or stay pregnant, and with the high risk of having a baby with severe thrombophilia, it's just not worth it. The genetic flaw stops with us. Story 44. Bad genetics. Histories of familial heart problems, alcoholism, and mental illness. In my opinion, since we invented the written word to pass on information, biological reproduction is not the only way to leave a legacy or secure a future. No criticism of those who choose that path. If that's what you want out of life, then go for it. Not to mention, there are already too many children on this planet without parents. Let's take care of them first.